Yo, what's up with y'all bloodies? So look, today we back with a W video, and we gonna be watching some true horror stories. So I'm not gonna lie to y'all, they don't be scary to me. I'm not gonna trash on the person that made this one though, because I haven't watched it yet, so I don't know if it will be scary or if it's not. But I want y'all to go check out Whisper Diaries if y'all wanna go watch more like these. This one was made by them. And yeah, without further ado, I don't like to do too much talking. We about to get right into the video.
This was in 2015. I had taken a road trip to a forest a few hours from me. There was a hike up to an abandoned fire lookout that I was really excited to explore. I should mention it was technically illegal to go inside it or camp in it, as it wasn't kept up with and could be structurally unstable.
Shaking
I'd
my
done some
head.
research online though, and most people said that it seemed okay, but the last post I could find about it was 3 years ago, so I
No,
really
that's
didn't know
crazy.
what I'd find when I got up there.
Why would you go? What?
Anyway, I found a small ditch on the side of the road that I could park in. Then I got out my backpack with 2 days worth of gear and started the
2
hike.
days. Not
With
one,
trips like
two.
this, there aren't usually defined paths to get there, so I used a handheld satellite GPS that allowed me to make sure I was going the right way. But really, the whole time I was just cutting through unknown terrain in the woods.
Crazy.
The hike from the road was about 4 to 5 hours. The further in I got, the more dense and rough the terrain got. I was really banking on the fire lookout to still be intact and good enough for me to camp out in, but I guess if not, then I was just gonna have to find somewhere else nearby to set up my tent and sleep at. After the pretty tiring several hours of hiking through the woods, I finally got there. I could see the building peeking out above the trees, and when I got closer, it actually looked decently in shape. The paint was worn off, of course, but it seemed to be holding up well. I gave the support beams a few pushes, and they were really solid, so I tried my luck climbing up the ladder. It was metal and felt sturdy, but still creaked with every step up.
I would
When
never.
I got to the top, I was in awe for a moment at the views. I could see basically the entire forest. There were no buildings or roads or houses for miles in all directions. It was just the woods. After taking in the view, I went around the ledge and inside the lookout. It was really small, not like one of those big ones that you see get turned into Airbnbs or whatever. This was just one room, maybe 150 square feet.
Good
It had
job.
a decaying bed in the corner and an old wooden desk in the other corner, with rotting windows spanning the entire wall. There wasn't too much else to look at in there, so I put my bag down and rolled out my mattress and sleeping bag, then heated up a meal on my mini camping stove. Once the sun was setting, I walked out to the ledge and watched it. It was by far one of the best views I'd ever seen. I felt like it went by quick though, and then it was just darkness. It was cloudy out too, so no moonlight or stars were lighting up the sky. With nothing else to do though, I stayed sitting out on the ledge for a while. It was probably an hour into the night when I saw something below me. There was a
I would have got
light
out of
moving
there.
around in the trees. What was strange about it though was it wasn't like an artificial light. It had this orangish hue and was kind of flickering, kind of like a campfire would, which led me to believe it was a torch. It was moving between the trees in the forest, not too far from where I was. The chances of someone else being out here at the same time as me in such a remote part of the woods were really slim, given there wasn't even a trail to get here. Also, traveling around at night without a normal flashlight and using a torch was pretty odd. I
Modern
watched
human.
as the light moved under the trees for a
You don't
while.
know nothing about that?
Then it went behind something where I could no longer see it. For the next 30 minutes, I never saw it appear again. I still stayed out on the ledge though, taking in the calmness and quietness of the night.
See?
Eventually, the wind started to make it a bit cold, so I stood up to
You
take
gonna
in
learn
one
your
last
lesson real
view
soon.
before heading inside. When I looked below the ledge though, someone was there. They were standing at the bottom in the grassy area between the fire lookout and the woods.
Please tell me you got a
It
registered
looked like
firearm.
they were looking directly up at me. Maybe it was the
Ain't no
person with the
way.
light I saw earlier.
No way.
Hello?
I called out. I didn't know what else to say. They didn't move or say anything back to me. It was just this strange 10 or 15 seconds of looking at each other before they lifted up their hand, like in an acknowledging way or apologizing. Then they turned around and walked into the woods, still with no light on.
Yeah, never.
Obviously, that was incredibly creepy and eerie, but for some reason in the moment, I felt so sure that it was just another hiker wanting to stay on the lookout. It was probably just looking up, trying to see if anyone was inside already.
Bro, survival instincts
Why he
suck.
hesitated to respond and only lifted his hand up, I don't know. I stayed outside for a little longer, but not seeing anything else, I went inside and got my sleeping bag to warm up. It was a little bit hard to fall asleep because of the wind hitting the windows and the wooden beams creaking under me, but eventually I did manage to pass out. It's hard to really know how much time passed, but when I woke up, the wind had settled down and it was still very dark outside. I opened my eyes, wondering why I was suddenly awake, but
Why
then
are
I
you?
heard a familiar sound. The soft metal creak of the ladder outside. I sat up, thinking I must be mistaken, but then I heard it again and again. Someone was climbing up the ladder. I couldn't tell how far up or down they were. I could just hear the hinges at the top of the ladder creak with every step up they took. Outside the windows, though, it was completely dark. I unzipped my sleeping bag and got up, heart racing as I grabbed my backpack and walked onto the ledge. During the 20 or so seconds that it took to get up, the creaking got louder and faster, like they were hurrying, before it suddenly stopped just as I made it out to the
And you
ledge.
let him get up there?
I stood in place for a moment,
Why
waiting
you didn't
for
go to the
another
ladder?
sound. Then I slowly walked around the walkway and peered around the corner at the opening to the ladder. No one was there. I
You let him
carefully
get up.
walked closer and felt my heart rate increasing as I leaned over and looked down. Nobody was on the ladder. I was just in shock for a second,
Wasn't on the
confused
ladder.
and scared
Just
and
heard-
unsure what the hell was going on. Then a sudden sequence of footsteps came rushing around
I
the
knew I
wooden
wasn't
walkway
tripping.
behind me.
You
I
let
only
him up.
caught a glimpse of their dark figure running between the windows on the other side. I didn't hesitate to lower myself onto the ladder and hurry down. It was terrifying, trying to
rookie.
climb down the slippery metal ladder as my whole body was shaking from the adrenaline rush, with someone chasing right above me. I got halfway down before I saw their head peer out from above. I didn't stop until I got to the bottom and into the woods. Honestly, I don't know why I even grabbed my backpack when I got up to see
just
what was
took your
going
spot.
on, but it
He
was the
just
best
burned you.
decision I ever made. Maybe even saved my life. With my flashlight
Oh, weenie.
and GPS on me, I was able to hike my way out of there and back to my car. As far as I know, I wasn't followed. I drove away and never looked back.
Bro was supposed to hit him with one of. He's supposed to hit him with one of them Jones as soon as he got to the last step of the ladder. He's supposed to hit him with a crazy haymaker. Instead, he just let him come up. Oh, and then he let him take his spot, and scare him off. Shaking my head. I'm gonna give this one a solid 6 out of 10. Let me know what y'all rate this down in the comments. We on with the next one now.
I was camping at a small lake for the weekend. Really, this wasn't supposed to be anything special, just a few days in the woods by the water to relax and nothing more. The first day was exactly that. I got there, set up camp, and chilled for the whole day and night. This was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It had a thin footpath leading to it, but it wasn't marked on any maps online or anything, so only locals would probably know about it. My dad used to take me here when I was a kid.
Damn, you had a
In
dad?
all my years going out to that spot, both as a kid with my dad and as an adult by myself, never once was anyone else here.
I envy you, man.
Honestly, there was never even any signs of anyone else ever having been there. Anyway, on my second day, I spent my time walking around the water and I guess just thinking to myself, I must have circled the lake 3 or 4 times. During those hours of walking, everything was quiet and nice.
Right.
But then, on one of my laps around the lake, I happened to spot some footprints in the dirt, just on the edge of the tree line. I had been walking the same circle over and over, and never saw them before.
What?
Where they
So he about to
were, it
drop
was so
on you,
clear and obvious, I don't think I would have missed them.
And he about to
They
beat
also
you.
looked pretty new, and what was really strange was not only that the footprints meant somebody else was out here, but that they were literal footprints. Like barefoot, not shoe prints.
Oh, hell nah.
The part
You
of the
about to
lake
run
I
into
was
them
at
people with
didn't even
spears.
have any easy access to the water, so it's not like they took their boots off before going for a swim. Not to mention, I would have seen them in the lake. Seeing this really creeped me out for some reason. Why didn't I see them nearby while I was walking around? Were they watching me and didn't want me to see them? It was hard not to get paranoid about it. From what I was able to see, it looked like the footprints went up to the tree line looking out at the lake, then right back into the woods, where it seemed to go straight back for a while. I didn't want to follow them into that unknown territory of the forest, so I just walked back to my campsite. I kept looking out to the lake, or I guess the tree line around the lake, seeing if anyone was out there. I never saw anyone. As the sun started to come down, the paranoia started to build up again. Something about the footprints just felt off, and knowing that they were likely still nearby, it wasn't a comforting feeling. When it got darker, I fueled up my campfire with a good supply of wood and sat around it.
Smart boy.
I did whatever I could to keep my mind off of it, but it was pretty difficult. Part of me felt justified in feeling uneasy, and another part of me felt like I was overreacting for no reason.
No, I never feel like
But
that.
not too far into the night, I
Always
heard
trust your gut.
footsteps approaching from the trees. I instantly turned and faced the darkness they were coming from. There
They?
were more than one. It sounded like 2 people,
I thought you only
slowly
found
walking
one.
closer to my campsite. I stared in their direction until they suddenly came into the light. It was a man and a woman walking next to each other and stopping just at the edge of where the light from the fire could reach. I couldn't see much of their faces, or really anything more than their basic shape. I couldn't even tell how old or young they were. "Can I help you?" As soon as I said that,
You sound like
the
NPC.
woman turned and sprinted back into the woods, completely disappearing.
Who she thought
But
she
the man
was? Wanna be
stayed where he
mysterious.
was. He didn't move or even look back at the woman.
Yeah,
It was
you should've
about
took your
then
chance,
that I looked
one-on-one.
down and realized he wasn't wearing any
Gotta learn how to
shoes.
squabble.
These were definitely the ones who were out by the lake. I asked again if I could help him, but then he too turned around and quietly walked back into the
Yeah.
woods.
As soon as he would have walked away.
I
don't
pretty
turn
much
your
had
head
an
to me.
internal freak out after that.
Straight decked
That
up.
was the most unsettling and strange encounter I'd ever had, almost not even feeling real.
You should
I
have
didn't
cracked
want to
off
be in
on
those
me.
woods for another second. I immediately started to pack my things. I'm not the kind of person to stick around when things get sketchy. Thankfully, my setup was easy to put up and take down, so I had everything
setup.
tied down in my bag and ready to go within a few minutes. I didn't know where they went, but I didn't want to still be here if they came back. I kicked out all the unlit logs from the fire, so it would burn out soon after I left. Then I hurried into the woods. The walk was nearly 2 hours. For the first 10 minutes, I was really on edge, unsure if I was being followed, but the further away I got, the better I felt.
Crazy.
It was about 40 minutes into the walk.
Y'all need
The whole
legal
woods
firearms.
was silent, not even any crickets or anything, when I suddenly heard running footsteps nearby. It was in the distance,
Oh, yeah,
maybe
they
a
on your
100
ass,
feet
boy.
from me, and it
They
was
on your ass,
definitely a
boy.
person. I couldn't see anything though, so I had to just keep walking.
You walking?
Only a few minutes later, I heard it again, this time on the other side of me.
Oh, they about to
The
look. They
footsteps
baiting you.
seemed quieter than they should have been,
I would've
too, which led me to
got
believe
up out
that
of
they
there.
were running barefoot, and that it was the same two
What?
I'd seen at the lake.
They tripping.
If they'd been stalking me this far into the woods, who knows what they were trying to do.
Bait you, man. They was
For a
trying to get
while,
you.
I'd keep hearing running footsteps in the distance, just short bursts, like they were quietly stalking me, and then suddenly sprinting away. I can't think of anything that would have been more terrifying than that walk through the woods. Somehow, though, I made it back to my truck. I was able to make it out of there. I wish I had more to say, or that I figured out who that man and woman were, or what they were doing out there. But I have nothing. Maybe I'm insane, but sometimes I wonder if
definitely
they were
is.
even alive or
Well,
not.
you definitely are insane.
I don't know,
Going
and
out
I'm
there
not
without
sure
no
I want to.
firearm. Crazy.
I never went back.
Good job. See, that's why you should have took off when you turned to his back. That's easy. Could have knocked him down, scared him, something. You just let him. This is the second story where they ran you, where they ran them out the park. They is basically getting a drop on y'all and then making y'all leave. Sad. But I'm gonna rate that. I don't even know. Well, I'm gonna rate that. I'm gonna give that a 4. It wasn't even nothing to it for real. I'm gonna give it a 4. Let me know what y'all rate that in the comments. We on with the next story.
I'm a 24-year-old female from northern Arizona.
A girl.
This
oh
was
my
a couple
God.
years
Please
ago.
tell me you got a firearm.
At the time, I
Please.
was living out of a small camper van, traveling along the west coast. There's a lot of different lifestyles. People like to live in these types of vans, or RVs. I always tried to keep out of the big cities and stick to small towns for camping in between destinations, but for the most part, I liked to camp out in the back country. Being in the middle of the woods with nobody else around was
I
where I
salute
found
you.
myself
You're a
most
total
comfortable,
retard.
and where I most
Well,
enjoyed
no,
the
you're not a
lifestyle
retard.
of
You're just
traveling.
remedial.
I think part of it is that it was always
Remedial.
safer to
We're
be out by
remedial.
yourself in the forest than it was to be stealth camping in a busy parking lot in the middle of a city. Don't get me wrong, it can still get creepy at night, but I always know I'm better off out there with nobody around. This week, I was slowly traveling between two big cities in Washington. I was taking my time, staying on the back roads and hunkering down at campsites for several days at a time. On this day, I pulled off the road and onto a small dirt trail going deep into the forest. There were a few pull-off spots, but none were taken, and it looked like nobody had been down here in a while. So I kept going, hoping to secure a larger and more scenic spot.
Retarded.
At the end, there was a large circle
Wow.
to pull off on.
Stupid.
It wasn't scenic, just surrounded by trees, but it was large and secluded and peaceful, and even had a stone circle in the middle for a campfire. I leveled out my van and parked. Since it was the middle of spring, it was raining pretty much every day here in Washington, so there wasn't much for me to do outside. I opened the side door to my van for some fresh air while I cooked a meal on my propane stove. It was around sunset, so I still had several hours before I'd be in bed. Over the next 30 minutes, the sun fell past the horizon, and the rain started picking up. I shut the door to keep the water out, and instead cracked open one of the
Straight had
small
a
windows
TV up
near
there.
the back
That's a
of the
cool little
van.
area. You feel
I
me?
sat on the bed and watched a show on my laptop, but midway through it,
You're
a
supposed to have a
glare came in
TV,
from
not
the
your
open window
laptop.
behind me. It was a light reflecting onto the screen of my laptop. Before I was able to react, it went away.
Oh yeah,
It
they
didn't move
stalking.
away though. It turned off, as if someone switched the light off. When I turned around and looked out the window, I saw nothing. It was really dark and still pouring down outside.
Should've
I had
got
no
that
way to
RV
know
on.
how far the light came from, or what it even was. Being on a trail with other pull-off spots, I had to assume it was just another camper. Maybe their headlights that somehow found its way through the trees and shined into my window. Then they quickly turned their vehicle off. The only problem with that was the light didn't come from the road I came down. Behind my window was just trees. Maybe there was another trail I didn't know about. There wasn't much investigating I could do
There's a
anyway,
lot you
so I
don't know
turned
about,
back
apparently.
around and went back on my
Like
laptop.
firearms.
Occasionally, I'd check out the windows, or think I'd heard something outside, but with the rain clanking against the metal roof, it wasn't clear if I was actually hearing something or not. Every time I looked, though, I never saw anything to confirm that something was out there, so I didn't worry myself too much. I want to say it was about 10 or 11 when I decided to call it in for the night and try to sleep. I turned off everything in the van, closed all the windows, and drew the shades. It was nearly pitch black inside. I got under the covers and tried to sleep. Usually, I didn't have much trouble at all, but tonight I just couldn't manage to fall asleep. Unfortunately, the rain picked up even more after an hour, and thunder started rolling in. It was very loud and made it impossible to even try to sleep. About 2 hours into the night, and through all the harsh rain and thunder, I swear I heard something move outside. It was just loud enough for me to know I really heard something. It sounded like someone or something running and kicking over a branch on the ground, somewhere just outside of my van. As soon as I heard it, there were no other sounds.
You're in the vehicle.
It
Make
was
sure your
so
doors are
dark,
locked.
I couldn't even see the ground beneath the window. The longer I looked out there, the more uneasy I felt. I just had this feeling like someone else was looking
I
back
got a
at me.
feeling.
I put the window cover back down. I sat there and tried to tell myself I was overreacting. But only a minute later, I heard a voice. It was a male voice, kind of in a loud whisper, like they were talking to someone else. I sat in silence, too scared to open the covers and look out the windows again, knowing they'd probably see me if they hadn't already. However, they likely already could assume someone was in the van, which makes it all the more terrifying. There was a good 2 or 3 minutes where I didn't hear anything aside from the rain and thunder, before there was suddenly something outside the sliding side door to the van. It sounded like bending plastic, like someone was leaning against the side door. Then there was a knock.
I would have pulled
A
off.
few seconds later, they knocked again. Even though I was sure they knew I was in here already, I still was too scared to speak. Maybe they weren't sure how many people were inside, or if I was a man or woman, so I felt safer not giving them anything and just staying quiet. A very disturbing and anxious 5 minutes went by as the knocking continued every few seconds without anyone saying anything. They had to be drenched by now and probably couldn't see at all through this weather. But then they finally said something. "Sheriff's Department, open up." What? I
WB.
didn't believe that for a second. If it were true, why wouldn't they have said that from the beginning? They continued knocking and calling out different lines, all basically stating that they were an officer and I needed to open the door. This seemed like a desperate attempt to get me to open up without violence.
It was.
I slowly lifted the window cover and looked out. All I could see was a dark figure moving near the door, but from the shape of it, it didn't look like he had any sort of law enforcement gear on, so I was sure this was about to get really bad.
Bro, drive
I debated in my
off.
head what to do for 30 seconds, as it felt like the knocking got more and more impatient, before I decided to risk getting into the driver's seat and trying to drive away. As soon as I went up there and turned the car on, I heard 2 sets of footsteps running up to the side of the van. I began pulling out just as a figure appeared in the window next to me. Thank God the van didn't get stuck, and I was able to get out onto the trail.
Should have been.
As I drove away, I never saw any other vehicle down the road, which makes the intentions of these unknown people likely really disturbing. I put in a report with the county, who of course said no officers were out there that night, but I never got any follow-up. Things could have gotten really bad out there, but I haven't had anything else happen since then.
You shouldn't have tried to go out camping after that anyway. Wow. So I'm gonna give this one a 5 out of 10. Let me know what y'all rate it down in the comments. But yeah, it seems like every time the takeaway from all of this is all three of them, all they had to do was own a firearm. Like, and the last girl, she did say she was 24. You're above the age to grab your gun license. Well, that's just if you're in the USA, but you're above the age to get your gun license. If you don't care to go outside with a firearm, like, and then you're camping by yourself. I don't know, man. So yeah, the takeaway from all of these, is carry a legal firearm whenever you go out camping because you never know what to expect. But if y'all want to see more videos like these, man, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. And I'm gonna catch y'all in the little next video. Peace.
Your skinny leaving mark like tattoo, nigga. You can't stop the rain, better not slipper. You gon' lose. I never heard to find, nigga. You can find me on 6'2". Tell me why you tryna slide when you only buy 5'3". I heard them.